All Canadian families, we are on the Titanic. The iceberg hasn't hit yet, so we're not sinking. If we don't shift course, that iceberg is coming for us.
I'm not planning on leaving. I'm fighting. We want to make this country incredibly great.
We begin to see that it really isn't about diversity. It is about punishing the people who perform beyond the mean.
For people who don't care, where do you see Canada going?
Oh, it's catastrophic. It is that bad.
What is the carbon tax doing to lower carbon emissions?
Exactly.
I love this country. I was born in this country. I believe in what this country stands for. I believe in its people. I believe as a place opportunity for all to come and live, but the path that we're on is not working. And we are not going to be what we're supposed to be if we continue along this path.
Yeah. Man, that intro gets me jacked. I almost want to watch it again.
We should start every episode with that loud in our ears.
That one line, what is the carbon tax do? I was like, that's right. What is it doing? No one knows.
I want to, that woman who's singing that with her voice, we should actually get her live on set every time singing in the corner. It was so...
Oh, man. Welcome, everybody. So good to have you all here.
What's going on?
We've got lots to talk about. There's a lot of crazy things that are happening in the country right now with timing. The timing is very strategic, very interesting. We're going to talk about them.
We've got some provincial elections that happened. We got
have no results.
New Brunswick has a result. They flipped government, Liberals, and we're still waiting on
British Columbia, which is
hey,
silly. Yep, nothing. I've been checking it every night, every day, all the time. Nothing moving.
It's coming down to the literal wire, like 100 votes, isn't it, on the final seat?
There's 11 different. What are they called? What's the parameters?
Ridings
that have 500 votes variance. So they're just so close.
Is there a minimal variance for how many times they recount? Like if there's 3 votes separating, how many times do they recount before they call it by 3 votes?
Honestly, don't know. I saw somebody Instagram the other day that every single counting poll should be live streamed to YouTube or something.
Yeah, why not?
Wouldn't that be great? Why not? Tune into every single one. Everybody's accountable. Their names are there. This is Jeremy Prest counting this. So it's like...
You know what I mean? It's on you, dude. Canada knows
it should be an honorable position of being
that's
like, all right,
not a bad
wouldn't
idea.
That be cool? I know.
Like we talk about accountability for so many areas of life. You're working out,
first, guys.
Get an accountability guy to help you with that.
Totally.
It's like we're voting for leaders in our country. Let's make it accountable and transparent.
Yeah. That's like, because you and I hear a lot of our friends and people go like, don't even vote. It's a conspiracy. You're a puppet. And it's like, come on.
Listen, if you're saying that, you are throwing democracy out the window. Democracy is the very idea of you and I citizens speaking, and that's the way we speak because it's impractical for 40 million people to get together and have a discussion. So we have elected representatives that you need to vote for. If you're not doing it, go live in a country that doesn't have democracy.
And I want to be careful with my words here, but if we actually get to the place where we think they're dictating our votes, we have a very big problem. Very big problem. And
I think we have a lot of people in our country that already believe that.
Which is crazy. And
like I'm totally guessing David's opinion, but I bet you it's upwards of like 20% that believe their vote counts for nothing because it's manipulated one way or the other, right?
And there's been a lot of weird things, I'll give you that. Like watching the U.S. election and stuff, there was like when they say the machines were broken and this and I get it. There was a lot of weird stuff, and I'll guarantee you, there's been tampering in the past. There's no way there's not. But again, that's my thoughts would be to make it as transparent as possible. Live stream the whole thing. Make it. Gosh, that'd be awesome. We'll count here at the Citizen Studio.
This is a legit idea. This is something that could make our country better. Is that we find out, live stream it. Mm-hmm. You know what? People who are live streaming it too, guess what? YouTube will probably pay you a little bit as well. You can make some money while you're doing it, or if it's the associations or what. Because I know most of those guys are volunteer positions, right?
Well, yeah, and there was a lot of people. So when I've been looking at the BC election, I've been watching every stream possible, watching on YouTube. But you know what's funny is that people are trying to find a place, like on the comments of YouTube. If you go and look, you can go look at the BC election YouTube streams of things.
Yeah,
people are writing their names. My name is Jeremy Prest. I voted for this. It's on record. So you know. And because that's a desperate cry. People are going, they don't even trust that their vote will do what it says. So they're trying to throw it on a comment section in YouTube.
That's all.
So it's interesting.
I think part of it too is also a result of the world that we live in. With there's so much, I think a couple things, so much bad information.
Yeah.
I also think that people are becoming so susceptible to just taking headlines as fact and truth. And again, I'm not dismissing the idea that there can be tampering or issues that's gone on. In fact, I bet you there probably has.
Yep.
I think for sure in the States there has.
Yep.
But I just think that I don't have an opinion yet. I think part of me doesn't want to believe it if it actually is happening. But I like the transparency idea. That's a good idea, man.
I know. Well, that'd be really cool. I'd love to. I don't know if we have enough time today, but I'd love to also touch on Kamala, Trump in the U.S., Trump at McDonald's, which I just thought was funny. And then there's the one thing that stands out to me was, and Vance is taking advantage of this, but it's the whole. Did you see at Kamala's rally where someone yelled, "Jesus is king"?
Yeah, that really made me upset.
And she just instinctively went, "You're at the wrong place."
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's nuts. And then did you see JD Vance?
No, what did he say?
So Vance is at a thing, and he comes up and he's just talking, and someone yells, "Jesus is king," and then he goes, "You're at the right rally," and he goes, "Jesus is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords," right there on the spot, just so everyone knows. Which is going, how refreshing is that?
Wow.
Gosh, that was cool. Anyway.
Yeah, you know what? I watched that and I actually had a bit of a reaction to it, just because it made me so mad. Because I'm not one of those guys that jumps on like every election that everyone says this is the most important election. But there is tensions that have been building for years and for years and for years, and it's not just a political divide. It comes down to a philosophical divide. It comes down to a beliefs system divide. And I think when someone is that over to ostracize and say this rally, this party, what I'm standing for does not stand for what you're saying. Yeah. Do you have any idea how many people in America believe in Jesus, believe in God, and will say that Jesus is Lord? Like, this is the foundations is a Christian nation, and that's what you're stating. You're stating
people realize how large Christianity is. It's the largest religion on planet Earth. It's I'll pull the stats up real quick. It's I guess I'm being here you go. Let me get it here. This is a courtesy of ChatGPT.
Well, a quick Google says that from 2021, Christianity represents about 63% of the states. Now, there'll be variance within what people define as Christian, but they identify as Christian, meaning there is a religious belief. They believe in God. They believe in Jesus Christ. That he died and rose again, somewhere in there. But
there is 2.38 billion people who adhere to being a Christian in the world. Yeah. 2.38 billion people on the planet. Isn't that wild? Well, I don't know if people realize that.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah, totally. There is.
I think because when you have something that shows, when proof is in the pudding, when you see what it represents and the principles it brings forth, and you look at what Christianity has done over the thousands of years, like what did Christianity do? Started hospitals, took care of the sick, brought people out of poverty, brought equality to people across, whether you're male or female or different races. Like, it brought equality because it didn't come from what you do. Your value came from a higher being. It came from God. Yep. So back to the Kamala thing, when she said that, it was just such a stupid thing to say, but also it's a complete showing of what's inside. We do not care for the standards and the things that are represented by Christianity, which the country was built on.
It tells me everything I need to know. Yeah, exactly. Every great nation that has, like, even look at the money, "In God We Trust," written right there on the money, built, and then look at their constitution.
This is why it's so important. We were talking about voting earlier. Knowing who you're voting for, not just the promises they make, because the promises mean nothing if they aren't going to keep them. People can lie all the time, and if you find out who someone is at their core, there are manipulators all over the place. There are people willing to lie to stay in power. I'm just saying, you have to know and do your due diligence to get to know who you're voting for. Like the person, who is that? Are they a family man? What do they believe? Do they have religious beliefs? What do they believe about abortion? What do they believe about finance? Have they been able to handle their finance? They want to build the country. What have they built in their life that thinks they can do this? Or there's all these things that we need to get to know, because those are all clues into, are they going to be able to do their job of what they're saying?
For sure. I'm trying to find. Have you seen the Kamala interview with what was his name? I don't know if I can find it right here right now. But he just what's his name? Kamala's interview with Fox, where he
Brett Baer.
Yeah, he destroyed her.
I saw a couple of clips of it. I haven't watched the whole thing.
It's crazy. Destroyed her.
Really?
She goes, you know, people are saying we want change, we want this, but if they want change, that means they want change away from you. And she goes, I wouldn't say it that way. And he goes, how would you say it then? He goes, you've been in office. It's your policies. You're the VP. We have the worst immigration we've ever seen. We want change means we want to change. And then she goes, well, come on, you know that what we've been dealing with for the last 4 years. And he goes, what have we been dealing with? And this is her response. Trump's been campaigning and running for office. And he goes, are you kidding me? That was her response.
You're joking.
Not kidding one bit. Trump's been running for office. That was her response. And that's where
it sounds like two grade sixers sitting in a principal's office. One's caught in the act and trying to blame the other person to get out
ridiculous.
of
it. And that's right. Go watch that clip. It's
oh my gosh.
Not even clip. Watch the interview. It's
the
most exposing thing of Kamala.
First off, there's no self-awareness. What's going on? The fact that it is so blatantly obvious.
Yeah.
Second highest position in the country.
Yeah.
And you're casting blame to someone who's holding rallies.
You see, and this is some of the stuff that's crazy because she was in charge of the border and immigration, and so she was supposed to look after the policies and et cetera. And I was watching Elon Musk talk about to Tucker Carlson where he was being sued. So I don't remember which body of the government was suing him, but they were suing him for not allowing asylum seekers work or apply for SpaceX. He's being sued by a government body. Yeah. And Tucker's going, what? He goes, yeah, this is the most outrageous thing. We're not talking even about like asylum seekers. And he goes, first of all, how do we know? Who are they? How can I document them? And so he's going, I'm being sued for this. He goes, this is an impossible lawsuit to even follow. And Elon was kind of just elaborating on this. He goes, this is outrageous. What have we done? It's the craziest thing ever.
And this is a private company.
Yeah.
If a guy can do what he wants.
It's outrageous.
With it.
It's ridiculous. There's a video I want to show you, and I do want to get to the 30 MPs. But
back to Canada? Well, America does have a lot of impact on what we do.
It really does, yeah.
And you know what? Is that depending on this upcoming election, I do think it will dictate a little bit about what Trudeau does, because I think if Trump does win the election, I think you'll see come out of the Liberal government, they have to stay in power in order to balance this type of government that's in the U.S. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of effect that has on it. But you and I touched on this last week's episode because on Thanksgiving weekend, Prime Minister, there was 30 MPs who were gathering, kind of having their own caucus outside of the main caucus. And there's been a lot of, and even recently, there's a lot of guys who are speaking out about the potential leadership of the Liberal Party.
I don't think people realize how big this is. There's not enough people talking about it. It makes
discussing the future. Like there's nothing that's obvious yet, but they are discussing the future of what does our party look like, where we're going. Obviously, they are not in the good graces of the general public. They are declining. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's polls have been declining, especially as you're heading into what most likely will be an election within the next year. Is that on that very day when this started coming up, Justin Trudeau, as you said, was on Thanksgiving Monday, I believe, on the holiday, was seen go into
his office
there all day. And that evening came out with a statement that had nothing to do with that, had nothing to do with the potential Chinese interference stuff that's been turning around, but it had to do with bringing light to basically throwing out a couple of India's diplomats that they're relating to the Khalistan movement, which there's some stuff to talk about there as well. So that's what happened last week. So you want to bring up what you were reading today as well, because there's some continuation on that.
Well, and I'm trying to figure out how many seats the Liberals hold here. It's just waiting for the search to work. But the thing is there's 30 members of Parliament who are claiming that they don't have confidence in Trudeau anymore. This is the foundation of the party. And if I can find the seats that they hold, so they hold 157 seats. If they lose 30, I don't know if you can search to find out how much the Conservative have, but if they lose 30, that means 30 votes will go elsewhere. So it'll also bolster the possible opposing parties. And so with the party losing confidence in their leader, this is catastrophic for the leadership. And so the Conservative Party is bringing votes of non-confidence into the House, and then they're getting voted out, which this is the part that's extremely frustrating to me, is that the whole point of non-confidence votes is if you lose confidence in the leadership. For 30 members of Parliament to put their neck on the line and go against their leader, they don't have confidence in their leader. And that's 30 that are bringing it up and willing. It makes you wonder how much of the party's actually starting to fall apart. But he's not even addressing it. That's the thing. So question period, they were going to bring the question to the question period today about the 30 members of Parliament. So I don't know exactly what question they would bring. Here you go. She has I don't know if can you read that, David?
That's a breakdown of by province. I saw that and I was going through trying to add it quickly in my head. But it says, 153 is for the Liberals. Yeah. The Conservatives have 119. The Bloc
119. Right? That's all I need to know.
Yep.
So if they have 157 and they lose 30, that brings them down to 127. And then where do those 30s go? That would make it a Conservative, if they all went to Conservative.
Well, because there's 338 seats total in the House.
But they have a minority with 157.
They do. Yeah. And obviously the NDP has been propping them up for the last couple of years, but that has been quote unquote torn up.
Yeah. Yeah. You can go get rid of this screen now. But and so essentially what this means is wild. So they're going to bring the question to the floor today in question period, but guess who decides not to come? Wild guess.
They were bringing this up to question period?
Today.
Who's they?
I guess it was being
the
brought
30
to the
Liberal.
So I would assume the 30 Liberals or maybe the Conservatives. I don't know who. And guess who decides not to show up today? Trudeau.
He didn't show up again.
He was at his office, and he doesn't come to question period. So this is what I mean, though. Is like we have these processes in place so that the leader can be accountable to the processes and answer the questions and deal with the problems. But we're seeing avoidance of process. We're seeing avoidance of questions. When it comes up on the weekend of Thanksgiving weekend, he goes into his office and guess what? Brings up a giant issue with the India diplomats. No one's being fooled here. It's avoidance. He's just avoiding and trying to distract. It's like that's the part that bothers me the most, is that due process is here inside the House of Commons on purpose. Yeah. And we're not following it.
Well, there's an article that came out in the Post I was reading last night about, I think it was entitled "The Sharks Are Circling." Yeah. Just about different people who are potentially being touted to throw their hat in for the Liberal leadership race, even though there is none yet, meaning there's smelling, like sharks are circling, they're smelling blood in the water. For example, there's former BC Premier Christy Clark made headlines because she's eyeing up the Liberal leadership when it eventually opens up. She's currently taking French lessons and stuff like that, really? So you can tell getting ready. She made a comment saying the Prime Minister has earned the right to make any decision about his leadership on his own, but the position of leader is not open. So we know that. But the point is, what you're saying, what these things are going on, is interesting. You got the former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney as well, made a comment a while ago on a podcast that he is going to be running for elected office, but didn't make any commitment to any didn't distinguish which office, but you can only speculate that looking at that.
There's a couple key positions as well in the Liberal
caucus there.
Liberal caucus that were appointed by Justin in 2015 when he took office, that are saying they will not be running again. So even if we go to election, they will not be joining the Liberal Party again. Which is interesting. Which is pretty wild. There's three of them, I believe. I don't have it in front of me. But
projections are showing that there will be a major turn when it comes to this next election in terms of Liberals might have one of their lowest amount of seats in their party's history. It's interesting. The Globe and Mail also came out today breaking a story based on what you and I talked about last week with the Prime Minister's office casting out a couple of diplomats from India and then using that. We definitely was speculating, is this a distraction technique?
It feels like a distraction.
Because of the 30 guys that were going on. But what ended up happening, and the RCMP came out and made statements, because there was some investigations regarding the Khalistan movement, which is some of these guys are potentially involved in illegal affairs, whether drug or I think even murder was thrown around, if I'm remembering correctly. So there's reason. It's not like it's just out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Our government's going to toss them out. No, there's some stuff behind there they're looking into. But the thing that was interesting is that it's now found out, because this is really funny, because when there was Chinese interference stuff going on, or at least being looked at, Trudeau made the comment saying, whoever's leaking this information, they are criminals and they should not be leaking it. Yeah. Well, according to the Globe and Mail today, they came out and said the Prime Minister's office leaked information to the Washington Post about these, about India and officials being taken out in the Khalistan movement. And that was supposed to be private. The Globe and Mail obviously uncovered that. So it's a little bit of a double standard, a little bit of one going on. And this is what Norman Spector wrote. He goes, Trudeau's Prime Minister's office outplayed the Globe and Mail with his explosive Thanksgiving allegations, starring the RCMP, diverting attention from China interference. But the Globe is getting its last laugh today as they expose the Trudeau government for leaking information to the Washington Post. So, and obviously not saying it's Trudeau himself, but within his office, there was information that they knew, and they leaked it before the RCMP was able to go public with some of the information that they were looking and they were going to be investigating, which I'm not sure.
So I think this kind of pushes our speculation further, though.
A little bit. It doesn't
confirm anything, but it also it kind of shows the urgency that they were trying to get it moving along further so that they could kind of jump on board with the urgency of it.
Yeah. Brian Lilly jumped on this too. Federal officials provided intelligence about India to Washington Post. Sources are saying, so he's got a little bit of, if you follow Brian Lilly on Twitter, he's got some stuff that's following it, which is interesting to look at.
So this brings me to this video here that I want to show, Russell Brand. So if Russell Brand kind of goes, but he's kind of talking about the observation we're seeing and why we're seeing so much stuff happening here. And Elon kind of answers it a bit here. So it just kind of speaks to the strangeness we're seeing in the political environment that's kind of happening in everywhere. It looks like we're going. So here it is. I'll see if it works.
Involved in something beyond a moment of political discourse and dispute. We are involved, I believe, in what can only be described as spiritual warfare. What do you mean by that, Russell? I mean that there are ulterior and potentially ethereal forces at play. That sounds crazy, man. Well, put it this way. What motivates you moment to moment? What's in your heart? What's in your mind? Are you beginning to see how the rational and material world is buttressed when there is no recourse to a kind of universal divine set of principles and ideas that might guide and direct us? Do you see that if you annihilate God, what you end up being left with is man as the apex of all power, mankind? And who are the nominees of this new materialist power? Justin Trudeau, Macron, Starmer, Kamala, Bill Gates. When we talk about this cartel cadre of globalist corporatists, what we're talking about is the replacement of the authority of God and the divine. I'm not making any claim that one religion is superior to any other. That's a claim that all of us must individually decipher for ourselves. But decipher is right, because the ciphers are who are in charge now. Conduits, I believe, for a dark power that's hell-bent on globalism and totalitarianism. It's interesting and fascinating to hear Elon Musk talk, certainly the first time I've ever heard him talk about the need for God, the need for theology, the need for religion and spirituality. In many of the dystopian depictions that we've seen in the last few years, just give you one example, Handmaid's Tale, brilliant novel by Margaret Atwood, what's being offered to you is that what you must fear is a kind of Christian totalitarianism. I myself, in fact, in my Russell Brand stand-up breakdown on Locals, you're going to love it, guys, looked at a bit of stand-up I once did on the 10 Commandments. I can see then that I was focused very much on the Christian right and how I saw that Christianity was used to marshal political authority. But now it is humanitarianism that's used to marshal human authority, governmental authority. Let me give you one example. What's the reason, look at the mainstream media, what's the reason that your taxes are being used and spent on the Ukraine-Russia conflict? Tell me what that is. It's because Putin is a criminal, interlocutor and intruder on Ukrainian territory, and that we as humanitarians must protect the Ukrainian people. Now, of course, a religious purview would provide you with ample motivation to end all wars, to protect all of the vulnerable people people in the world, to look at all of the people in the world as a part of a sacred brotherhood worthy of sanctuary and sanctity. But from a materialist humanitarian perspective, you can elect and select which wars you care about, which rubble is important, which refugees are important, which dead and damned people are important. They are doing nothing less than replacing divine authority with their own authority. We don't decide whether or not we worship, we decide who we worship. And they are deciding on our behalf over the course of this electoral cycle that we will worship them.
He spits facts
My
quick,
gosh,
quick, eh?
I want to watch this whole thing. We should just do the episode. Because, okay, a couple points. We decide who we worship.
We don't decide if we worship, we decide
100%.
who.
That's the point, is that you as citizens, me, Jeremy, we all worship something. Yeah. Some of us choose to worship self, meaning we put ourselves above everything else. Some of us choose to worship money, meaning we chase, and the pursuit of money is our God. We pursue it no matter what. Some of us worship God. Some of us worship Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. Some of us worship whatever. That point is valuable because you have to recognize everybody is worshiping something. Some of us, like what he's talking about, and he's laying blame at some of these guys' feet, they worship themselves. They worship themselves, and the way to build that up is to by holding and attaining power, is what he's suggesting. And it gives you great insight. If you can know what somebody worships, you can know what they're going to be like or what they're going to try to achieve and do. Really, hey?
Absolutely.
Like, that was unbelievably said. The other thing that stood out to me was picking and choosing the wars you support.
Yeah.
There are a lot of conflicts and wars going on in the world, but there's only one that seems to specifically be brought in front of the media. And remember, Canadian media and American media is not the only media in the world.
Well, you and I talked about this, I think it was 1 or 2 episodes. Remember I told you that they were the term genocide?
Yeah.
Why are they labeling genocide on one war and not the other? Both wars their goals are to eradicate and defeat the enemy to a point where they're so weak or gone till they win. But Israel is the only one being called genocidal. You're like, what? Like the hypocrisy is so weird.
Or the aggressor.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's like, why? Who are they to tell us? Like, how do we know? We don't know the facts. We don't know the details. We have a good friend of ours that's from Ukraine, and when we were kind of picking his brain, it was very insightful to me. Where I was like, oh, we don't have the whole picture. We don't know the details at all. It was just like, I felt just so ignorant because I was like, what's your take on this? What's this? Is Putin this? And he goes, there's a lot of Ukrainians that support Russia. There's a lot of Ukrainians that don't, and it's not a clear divide. It's not one versus the other.
It's not a clean, clear good versus evil. Did you watch Tucker Carlson's interview with Putin at all? Like, this is going back 9 months ago.
Very little of it.
I watched it when it came out. I was actually, I think I was in Toronto, and I was in the gym listening to it. And I remember being so drawn to it that I was like, between sets, I was like 7-8 minutes between working out. Because listening to Putin, he didn't seem like an irrational, emotional maniac that was hell-bent on destruction and domination of the world. The guy does not have a clean past.
Yeah, not at all.
I'm not saying he's clean now, right? I do think at the heart of it, he's a thug, and he comes out of very interesting lines. But I didn't get the sense from him that he wants to conquer and destroy for the glorification of Russia at the expense of those. He's got it seemed like, I'm not saying I agree with what he says, but he seemed to be very rational and thought out onto why we're doing this, why we're doing it now, why we went to go into Crimea in 2014. That's why Tucker made a joke saying, I don't really need a history lesson, but Putin was walking through his rationale of the history and why they believe they're entitled, and the stuff that's happening with NATO and blah, blah, blah. So all my point is saying that is, when we look at it from our Western perspective, it's not as clean cut as we tend to think, or the news portrays it as, right?
Well, and that's why every war goes that way. That's why I love what Russell was saying here, is that he's saying they're using humanitarianism as the cloak in front of your eyes,
the vehicle
the vehicle to drive their agenda home. And so if you don't support Ukraine, oh my Lord, you're evil. Like, immediately, and you're going, if you just question it, you're evil, you're crazy, what's wrong with you? And it's going, No, we just can't take the mainstream's narrative and just take it. I want to see Elon's response here though, because it's an incredible response. Can we get some
and
Jeopardy music?
We got do 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 do.
Come on, Wi-Fi, you can do it.
It's got the wheel of
it does.
Spinny wheel
of death.
If you scrub on
their
it,
own authority. We don't decide whether or not we worship. We decide who we worship, and they're deciding on our behalf over the course of this electoral cycle that we will worship them, not just nationally but internationally, not just internationally but globally. They want a 360 sphere of information control. In this conversation with Tucker, Elon Musk talks about the role of religion. He talks about the impact of the decline in religion.
Part of it, I suppose, is sort of the decline of religion. So, as the saying goes, nature abhors a vacuum. So when you have essentially a decline in religion, an increase in the secular nature of society, for most people, they need something to fill that void. And so they adopt a religion. It's not called a religion, but effectively like woke, the woke mind virus. It takes the place of religion.
Yes.
And they internalize it and they feel it with religious fervor.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And
rigidity.
Yes. Yes. And they essentially conduct a holy war, effectively. It's just not called a religion, but it is a religion.
Yeah.
Sort of a woke holy war. And they're highly resistant to change, as is normal for religions. So now, for myself, I sort of see myself as a sort of engineer, physicist. For me, I'm culturally Christian. I grew up Christian. I mean, I was Anglican.
And he goes on to explain. His background of church and family and logical, and his engineer's mind of a physicist, et cetera, about the logic that he struggles with as far as religion goes. But then he essentially makes the point after explaining all of that is we need religion. We need religion because it brings moral value and doesn't worship self. And
he defines religion not because he also uses the word religion for woke.
Yeah.
But he's talking about religion based off of
a divine being that is morally good.
It's transcendent.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you look up because I agree with him that you look at the woke, as he says, mind virus, which it is. It is a religion. One of the definitions of religion is a particular system of faith and worship, right? It's also a pursuit or interest to which someone ascribes supreme importance.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is what happens. But he used the term holy war. If I think of holy war, another word you can use is jihad, is from the Islam religion, is that they feel compelled in what the religion states. Yeah. They want people to convert, right? Even by force. The woke mindset has a very similar idea that if you do not adopt what I believe, I'm going to come at you, I'm going to do whatever I can to make you believe, and I'm not even interested in what you're saying because I've already ascribed supreme importance to what I believe. Like, it has all the attributes.
Yeah, and like the conservative viewpoint on that is you believe what you believe, but just don't make me believe what you believe. Like, we can coexist.
Totally.
We can coexist. But that's not what the woke viewpoint is. The woke viewpoint is you must agree, you must say. That's why the changing of language is such a dangerous road to go down.
Yeah,
they're trying to compel you with words, which is why Jordan Peterson took such a large stand a number of years ago to go, no. But so you transphobic anti-non, he goes, I'm not transphobic. I'm just saying I'm not going to use my language in my circles. No, you can, you go ahead, but don't force me legally to use your pronouns. It's not okay.
Yeah.
And that's why it's such a slippery slope, is we must be careful, very, very careful with that.
Could we describe that as the same thing as a humanitarian approach? Because
it's the same idea.
Same idea as using a certain vehicle to get a deeper thought or a deeper ideology across.
Yep.
In the sense of be a good person and just do this out of respect or whatever, right? I'm wanting to bring up a video, but it's loading right now.
Okay.
But the video essentially it's kind of on topic of what we're talking about. But there is a Hezbollah leader who was in one of his interviews recently was stating how they have been investing in protests in Western countries,
Really?
paying people.
Why would he admit that?
I don't think they care. He did. He just said that's something that we do because hopefully it starts playing here any second though. But anyways, it's interesting to hear that because a lot of times we talked about on campuses, you seeing these things happen. And it's like, what is going on? Are these people? And obviously a lot of people join, but it takes that one or two or three. It takes like a little spark to ignite kind of a flame. And as it seems that they're obviously, we've known for protests for a long time, even going back to BLM and other stuff, is that there is groups that are interested in funding and inciting a lot of these things.
Yeah, like even the fact that when the thing that's kind of intrigued me, and I'd love to maybe dive into this in a future episode, is that like when one protest is allowed versus the other not being allowed. When you look at what the BLM protests / riots, what do you want to call it? I don't know, because they were definitely started as a protest and went into a full-fledged riot and burning and all that. But that was in the thick of COVID. So at the very same time, what I know because of my beliefs is that there was a Let Us Worship protests where people were coming to the streets to try to worship for their religion during COVID, and they were shut down, full police presence, not allowed to happen, and it was completely squashed. So they kept trying to do it in an incognito type way. Whereas at the exact same moment in time, exactly the same time, BLM was, gates were open. There was no suppressing of it whatsoever. And then when you look at the Freedom Convoy was allowed for a little bit and then completely squashed with huge measures that were just against it. So there's some that are allowed, some that aren't. If it doesn't agree with, it seems like some sort of agenda or narrative, that's when they seem to get squashed. But it at least begs to ask the question.
Well, no doubt when it comes to religious freedom, you look at the Christian group, is that there is definitely different rules for Christians, even in terms of being come after by society. There just is different rules in terms of that they don't get away with the same things that other people do. Not that you have to quote unquote get away, but anything else you want to comment on the Russell Brand? Because I got a couple fast action things.
I just thought it was very, very important. Like, especially because in the wake of like what is happening to our world, that's something we got to understand. We need people to have a good moral compass.
Yeah. Well, in the interest of gun control in Canada, 2 years ago, Justin Trudeau is tweeting, "Today we froze the handgun market and stopped handguns from being bought, sold, or transferred anywhere in Canada. We choose your safety over the gun lobby every time." Interesting.
So crime has improved, I would assume, and like.
Well, the reason why I want to bring it up because there's some interesting responses that have been happening. Gray Matter, Leighton Gray, one of our friends and also part of the Return the Reason team, put this out. This is like actually about an hour and a half ago. We have nearly 3 million guns that we know about in Canada, roughly 365,000 registered owners in Alberta alone. If ownership of guns were a safety issue, then gun violence would be a constant. Instead, the inescapable truth is that Canada is a model of responsible gun ownership to the world. Interesting that he put that out there. There's also, I wanted to read something from the Toronto Police Association because they came out and said, criminals did not get your message. Our communities are experiencing a 45% increase in shootings and 62% increase in gun-related homicides compared to this time last year.
Wait, it's illegal. How did they get the handguns?
Well, it's beyond me. Criminals,
well, they don't go the legal road. That's my point. Criminals don't care. So you're taking handguns away from the legal abiding citizens with the proper license.
I was trying to play up the sarcasm with you by
I didn't catch that. I was like, David's really struggling.
It's beyond me of how these guys are getting their guns. Obviously, there's a law in place.
Yeah, exactly.
So how are they getting their guns?
Exactly. They don't go the legal road. Nothing shows us that this works. That's what blows my mind.
And it's interesting. They go, what difference does your handgun ban make when 85% of guns seized by our members can be sourced to the United States? And it just says, they're being accusational here, your statement is out of touch and offensive to victims of crime and police officers everywhere. Whatever you think to improve community safety has not worked, is what they came out and said, which is quite interesting. Because we obviously, you look at charter rights, look at Canada, we aren't the U.S. in terms of how to own and operate guns, but I think Leighton has a point, is that it is a model of of responsible gun ownership. And
Yeah.
I do believe that people are entitled to be able to own and have legally and be responsible with guns for self-protection and all those type of things. But anyways, I thought that was relevant.
In Canada, it's not for self-protection at all. You can't have that reason whatsoever. But
unless you're met with equal force, right? That's the only way.
that is the only way, which it has to be proved in court.
Totally.
Which it doesn't. So it doesn't even necessarily say that. But yeah, you're right. It's that one's a joke. There's we only have a couple minutes left, but there was something you mentioned about the charter lawsuit in Newfoundland.
Yes, I want to.
I want to talk about that because these are stuff I want to look at down the road, and I want to make sure that everybody watching the show can see as well.
Christine Van Gun, I think I'm saying her last name right. She wrote yesterday there, and this is what's happening, is that there is a COVID travel ban case that's making its way to the Supreme Court of Canada. It's a big deal. It's a case of Taylor versus the province of Newfoundland.
And I just to interrupt you for a second. This stuff is really important because this is somebody taking the charter for what it's supposed to do. And whether you agree about the travel ban for COVID actually isn't important. What we need to see here is if the charter withstands the test that's happening. This is a test for the charter to see if it's actually here to protect you as a citizen, which it is.
Yeah.
That's the point of it. So we're going to see what our judicial system does.
And going to the Supreme Court is going to the highest level of law in our country. And government will bring and introduce laws and bring laws in, and the Supreme Court will have to interpret them as to what's going on. So basically what happened was this Taylor was denied the right to enter to Newfoundland during COVID to attend her mother's funeral and missed her mother's funeral, which is obviously horrible. And the province argues that there is no Section 6 charter right to travel between provinces. And the Canadian Constitution found has been, they're part of it as well. So that's interesting. That I'm glad it's going to that because I was just
does it not say right in our charter or in the right?
Yeah, it does. It talks about as a Canadian in Section 6. It talks about as a Canadian you have the right to be able to move
freely,
leave in and out of Canada, to remain in any part of it, to pursue and gain. I'm reading it now. To pursue the gaining of a livelihood in any province. Any laws in Part B providing for reasonable residency requirements as a qualification to receive of public provided services. So that's there.
Isn't there a part that says without hindrance?
I'll read it. Every citizen of Canada has the right to enter, remain in, and leave Canada. 2. Every citizen of Canada and every person who has the status of PR of Canada has the right to move, to take up residence in any province, to pursue the gaining of a livelihood in any province. So that's what it's read, and you can keep going. The rights specified in this section are subject to, and it goes on to a bunch of them. So they're arguing that the argument's going to come down to this. It's going to come down to Section 1 of the Charter, which again, I've quoted this quite a bit, but as, why am I blanking on his name? Our good friend, he, former leader of the opposition, anyways, he was saying that it is essentially a get out of jail free card, Section 1 of the Charter, right? Because it basically...
But that's even up for debate though, but yeah.
Well, that's what comes down to the court for interpreting, right? Because Section 1 reads, essentially, the charter rights can be limited by law so long as those limits can be shown to be reasonable in a free and democratic society. So justifiable, reasonable, that's up to
this is why the
interpreter.
Is why the legal lawsuits are so vital. They're so vital that they happen. They must go through these stress tests to figure out how we get through this and how it sets the stage for future events. Because the Emergencies Act is actually in a number of it's still being tried.
Yes, there's lots of cases.
To figure out if they had reasonable cause to enact the Emergencies Act, and when that comes to what am I looking for? A result. That's a big day. We're gonna have to cover that and make sure that we get to the bottom of that because that's huge. That'll determine the way that they handled the Freedom Convoy, the way that they handled a lot of the U.S. blockades, all that stuff.
And it sets precedent for how things will be handled down the road.
For sure.
So be watching for that one. That's Taylor versus Newfoundland. Because this is, guys, it's all connected. It's all connected in terms of who you vote for, the governments we put in place, the prime ministers in office, because they will appoint senators, they will appoint judges. There's different systems that go through, and these people eventually make their way to different levels of law. And these guys are the ones who are going to be making decisions whether things stick or whether it doesn't have precedence or not. It all affects our life and our generations. That's why it's so vital to be informed, to know what's going on, to be aware, use your voice, which is a vote, but also use your voice to be discussing and talking where you need to. So, anyways.
And the last thing I probably want to say too is to double down on what you're saying, is that I've got a number of friends that are extremely involved in their educational system, school boards, on their local elections, and they're involved. And these are very, very, very busy people. They run, one of them is a VP of a company. The other one has a number of kids, and they homeschool them all. They are busy people, and they actually, this is what they do. And they actually find times to go on a date before they go to these by-elections, before they go to these board meetings. One of them is a secretary for the board of their local elections that they have within their ridings. Like, it's amazing the involvement they have. And it's inspired me to be like, I need to get involved in mine, and I need to figure out because this is the way that certain laws get passed, that certain, it all flows through these local. It's all local.
Yeah.
Local is the strongest thing because it all comes
100%.
and rises to the top.
100%. That's a good point.
We must get involved.
Yeah, like federal is very important. You got to keep in track of all of it, but get involved at the local level because those are the direct ones. Like they all have impact, but that's an awesome
That's where
point.
it all starts.
Don't get overwhelmed with thinking federal and big. It's like, no. What can you do in your community? Start there.
Absolutely.
Good, man.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, that's a lot. I think there's a lot going on the show. I want to encourage anybody who's watching, where you're watching from, and we're seeing a growth in our channel, which is awesome. So I want to see where you're watching from, what's happening, what you like, what you don't like. I would love to do a show of interacting with you guys again, where we maybe do a live very soon and
we got to do another live soon.
Talk about what's happening. The election, the U.S. election's coming up November 5th. That's in a couple weeks. We're probably going to be doing a live on that, so you guys should get ready for that and join us for the U.S. election, because my gosh,
that'll be fun.
What is going to happen there?
We got to sort that one out too.
That's going to be crazy.
Right on.
Okay.
Let's put it a wrap. See y'all later. Bye-bye.